Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Caroline Makes Cards. It's been a while since I've made a video. I have been focusing on what I can do and what I can't do with a cast on my arm. Today's card features Simon Says Stamps Peony Bundle Embossing Folder. This card started off as a birthday card, but I had to turn it into a wintry floral Christmas card because of some of the challenges I faced as I was making this. So let's get started. Simon Says Stamps embossing folders are very thick. The resulting images are deeply embossed and beautifully three-dimensional. I'm going to be heat embossing the background. So as I apply the Versamark ink, I try to hit just those flat areas around the peonies. Because of the three-dimensional nature of the image, there are some high areas where it is difficult to avoid getting Versamark ink on them. I will be embossing with a Big Shot die cutting machine. Because the folder is so thick, you do not require the cutting plates. I use 3 pieces of heavy cardstock stacked together as a shim underneath the embossing folder. I apply Ranger's holographic embossing powder around the perimeter of the image. Because there are so many tiny background pieces peeking through the leafy areas, I have no choice but to coat that entire area with the powder. I use a fine water brush to try to remove a lot of the powder that has strayed in places that I do not want it to be. The cast on my right hand has made this very challenging. I just don't have the fine motor control that I require, and this is the point where I decide that I am going to change this from a birthday card to a Christmas card, and I'm just going to work with it. At this point, I stopped trying to remove all of the embossing powder off of the leaves, and I didn't even bother trying to get them off of one fine branch with slender leaves. As chance would have it, I could not have chosen a better embossing powder for this Christmas card. You can see in the video as I'm heat setting, as the light strikes an area, there are these beautiful subtle colors that appear. I love it when everything falls into place when you have to switch gears. I was excited to paint these peonies and thought I would be able to manage with zig markers and a water brush pen. This was actually one of the reasons why I chose to heat emboss the background. The embossing would provide a little bit of a safety net for me just in case that paint spilled out into the background. And it did, and it worked. I decided to keep it simple and I used just 3 zig markers, pale yellow, peacock blue, and lilac. The coloring was straightforward. Really, that's about the best I could manage. The marker was used to put color on the base of each of the leaves and petals, and then I used the water brush pen to help pull that out and give some variation. I colored the centers of the flowers first and then moved on to the leaves followed by the peonies. As I watch myself in the video, remembering that this has been sped up, I think to myself, oh, that wasn't so bad, but in fact it took me a really long time. I am glad that I tried this out. It was certainly challenging. I had been dying to do some coloring, and really I have it out of my system and I can wait now until the cast comes off. These big peonies really are perfect for coloring, and the fact that they are embossed just makes the process a whole lot easier. Of course, not in my case. It was obvious where the shadow areas needed to be. You just look for those deeply embossed areas. I certainly plan to redo this when I have my right hand fully functional again. And so now to turn this into a winter floral. I like to use white gouache paint for spatter. I water it down slightly and then use a fine watercolor brush to apply it. I like that the gouache does not let color bleed through it, and actually when it dries it is slightly dimensional. It's a good thing I remembered to put the panel inside my spatter box. I had paint everywhere, as you can see by my hand. When the panel was dry, it was trimmed to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. A piece of white sheet foam was cut to the same dimension and the panel was mounted on it. I trimmed a piece of Tonic Studio silver checker paper to fit on my A2 size card base. If you have never had a chance to check out their specialty papers, it is worth the time and effort. They are just gorgeous. To get this paper to adhere securely, I did place it under my MISTI for a few minutes. And I had to do the same thing again when I attached the main panel to the card base. Simon Says Stamp Sentiment die piece was die cut from the specialty paper and white sheet foam. The embossed specialty paper did flatten out slightly. However, the sentiment still retained some texture and tied into the background. After it was adhered to the foam die cut, it was attached to the panel. I then turned my attention to a thin branch with slender leaves that was embossed. The branch was lined with a silver gel pen. I then used Nouveau Crystal Drop silver lining to highlight the leaves and the berries. Additional drops were added on the branch that is below the peonies just to balance things out. And that wraps up this card using Simon Says Stamp's Peony Bundle Embossing Folder, featuring a combination of dry and heat embossing. Thank you so much for visiting.